remember to flip that. Good morning to one and all, ladies and gentlemen. Perhaps we have grandparents watching and even some boys and girls or young adults. Welcome to our next webinar. We're very excited to share with you what is going to happen next. My name is Gustav Gropp. I am the principal of the Oakridge International School in Hyderabad, and we're on the Newton campus. In our presentation the last time, we focused mostly on what parents can do at home and how we can build relationships and start with our kids. As parents, when we receive our bundles of joy when they're born, obviously we are so overjoyed that sometimes that joy has to last a very long time. As parents, generally we think we know what to do, and as we have our children, we learn what to do. As we ask these questions, and as we discussed at our last webinar, we do have some ways of doing things that make it easier the second time around. But I thought it would be good for us to watch a video that actually relates from research how much parents matter in building relationships with their kids and as well with their school. So let's watch this video together. As you can see, parents do really matter. The importance of building those relationships right from the beginning shows how important you are to your kids. Now today we're going to look also at the other set of parents. When you bring your child to school, whether they're starting school at nursery or preschool level, 2.5, 3 years old, or whether they're in middle school, primary, or even in high school, it is so important that as parents we realize that being the primary educators, having started a life with our kids, when we bring them to school, the teachers who are at school are also educators. They become the secondary extension almost of your family, and this is where your child learns so much. But that doesn't make them any different to parents. We believe that teachers really want to do the right thing for each child, and we're going to look and explore the areas that we had looked at during the parenting seminar and transfer those to the school so that you can see what we do when your child arrives. Now this is a very interesting picture. Last time we used it as well, and we said that each one of our children, irrespective of where they come from or who their parents are, they're uniquely different from every other child, and we recognize that at our campus, and generally I think educators across the world do agree to that. This picture is something that is very visual, and it reminds me of the wonderful complexity and diversity among the students, their abilities. And if I transplant that now into the school environment, here is a picture of some of the faculty that work on campus. You can see that everybody is different. They each bring a unique color to the canvas that is painted in the lives of a child. Your son and your daughter brings along their thoughts, their ideas, their ways of doing and their understanding to school, and that is added on and embellished and enriched because of the colors that every individual adult adds to that picture. Now here again is a picture that means so much to me because it illustrates for me very visually that when I deal with students and when I deal with little ones or young adults, I recognize the fact that each one of them is different, that they're wired differently, and that counter to the general expectation that everybody should turn out the same when they've gone through school with the same skills, the same set of ideas, it is almost impossible, simply because as human beings we evolve and we develop in so many different ways. If we look at any group photo of students, this happens to be a group photo of our senior school students who are getting ready for an assembly sharing time. If you look into the faces of each one of these kids, you can see that everybody has their own idea of what the reality is that surrounds them. We want to empower students to have a voice and to be themselves. When they come to school, they don't cease being your child. They just become part of the bigger family which is at school, and we honor their individuality and help them to understand what it means to work with others. If we run through those 5 steps that we had a discussion on in our parenting webinar, I wanted to just quickly go through them so that we remember this is the pattern. Again, this is not a recipe, it's not something that can be applied religiously. It's something that helps us on a conceptual level to understand how we can best assist. And within the school context, it does help when you have faculty coming from all the different states in India and some from abroad as well. So acceptance, very important here for us. When you realize that you're being accepted for who you are, it immediately puts you at ease in a conversation. The same happens between children and adults when they come to school. We would accept this type of acceptance to be consistently present. If somebody accepts you one day and not the other, there is a problem. It is very difficult to build a relationship. So we encourage total acceptance on our campus at school, and it needs to be consistently so. Only when these components are in place, when somebody feels I am accepted every single day, then they begin to listen. They feel, and the word we have here on the screen is obedience. As we have intimated in different discussions before, the word obedience sometimes has a negative connotation because it is counter to the intuitive sense of people being individualistic. But obedience here means within a specific context, there are certain things that are acceptable and others that are not. When you're accepted consistently, you do have a voice, you feel you can contribute. It means you also respect others and listen. And that's what obedience means for us. It means that you know when you need to speak or when you may speak, and you know also when you need to listen. And then the playoff happens, because the next point, which is very, very important for us, is training. Training and learning is what school is about. But if there is no acceptance, no consistency, and no obedience, training probably cannot happen. And we will unfold these in more detail as we go along. So if we recap again: acceptance, consistency, the listening, having a voice, then being open to training and learning, and then slowly but surely you move from a perception that life is about having to do things because you have to, rather than because you choose to. And that last one we will unfold in more detail. Looking at this picture, this is a snapshot of a classroom activity, which shows clearly that students are interacting with faculty as well as with one another, and it is very clear that acceptance is actually happening there. Look at it. Let's look at it in more detail. What does acceptance look like? It is unconditional. If we take a parallel from home to school, if I think of my own children, it is very important for a child, especially when they wake up, and for me it was very important to be able to wake up my own children, be there when they wake up, so that they understand that I care for them and that it's consistently there. So the values they pick up from home helps them to build relationships. When they come to school, they might be 2.5 years old, they might be 6 years old, or in middle school 11, 12 years old, or if they should join our campus at grade 11 level, they might be 16 or 17 years old. Never does the point of acceptance have a point of qualification. Acceptance is unconditional. It always should be there. So it's a point of non-negotiation. If a student steps onto the campus, they know that here I feel safe. People care about me and I'm always acceptable. It is so important that we bring that across. 24/7 being a popular phrase that people use in not only in home but also in the business environment. That means that acceptance in relationships needs to be a 24/7 exercise. Teachers are teachers when they arrive at school, and students start arriving as well. That acceptance needs to almost go into overdrive, because remember, unlike a family where you might have to deal with 3, 4, 5, 6, or in an extended family maybe 10 or 20 people, a teacher has to deal with all the students that they teach. Some teachers teach 100 students in a week, some maybe 200. So those relationships are very apt, and the acceptance needs to happen all the time. The school community, much like a family, produces relationships and values that are representative of that family. So in the school, being a community, even if it is a learning community, needs to realize that everything that happens within the community has a ripple effect. So acceptance here for us is non-negotiable. The PE teacher, the math teacher, the drama teacher, the physics teacher, all of them, irrespective of how they interact and what subject material they teach, they form part of the same community, and thus the acceptance of all students with their baggage is not negotiable, because it's a community expectation. And everybody, all the adults, from the security at the gate to the receptionist at the office, to the counselors, the teachers, the coordinators, the cleaners, all the adults model this acceptance towards the students, because they're the learners, and they need to see that when they accept one another, much like the adults accept them, then that is growing in life. it makes them a better person. Moving from acceptance to consistency, if you remember the pattern that we explained in the beginning, here probably in our home lives, it is so important for us to establish patterns. And I'm reminded of the morning times of prep when my kids were much younger, when we had to organize things in such a way that there was a predictability and that they could feel that they slowly but surely learn what the patterns are. Getting up, what does that mean for me? Getting prepped for school, being ready, having breakfast, making sure that lunch is packed, that my bag is packed correctly, and that we have that pattern settled, especially for children who have to learn to do things for themselves. And this is, of course, also quite a contentious issue. But let's look at the elements that make up consistency for us. Here, adult-student connections, the relationships that are established, help students to open up and become communicators. When somebody feels safe, if you think in your own context, when you start communicating with somebody openly, it is because probably you built up a relationship with them and you trust them. Because sometimes we share aspects of our lives that make us very vulnerable. In exactly the same way, when kids arrive at school, they would build relationships with staff, and much the same, the staff would build relationships with their students, and that is a consistency every day. Students come into school, they connect with their teachers, the teachers share with them, and it is less to do with teaching, more to do with relationship building. The next point over there says mood-free zone. Often we as adults tend to believe that we are free to change the moods that we experience. When you're a teacher, you don't have that luxury. Teachers need to be positive, need to be focused, need to be totally open-minded when they deal with kids on campus. And at our school campus, this is something that probably takes a lot of emotional resilience and emotional energy. So we believe that school is a mood-free zone. We are here for the children, and that is why it's important for all the adults, irrespective of what role they play on the campus, to be mood-free 24/7. When you're a teacher, you're a teacher. It does not stop for break time or after school. You're a teacher all the time. Again, the learning community, the wider learning community, which includes all of the students, all of the parents, all of the people who work on campus, not only the teachers, the support staff and other adults as well. This community becomes a reflection of what the vision and mission statement promises that we will deliver to our parents and our students. So it is very much a community-based issue, and that includes all adults. When we repeat something that comes from the family, that consistency allows your children to venture out when they know that they can always go back to mom and dad, or to grandmother and grandfather, or to any significant other adult, because they feel safe. They will venture out. They will take risks. They will learn new things. They will go a little bit further, because they know that when they feel unsafe, they can return to base. And this is what we believe in terms of the school as well, that kids need to be challenged to do new things and to take risks in their learning, because all the adults consistently accept them. On our screen we'll find a reminder. You will find a chat window. If you have any questions you would like clarification on, or just want to share with us, you're welcome to use that chat window. You will also find the info@oakridge.in email. If you wanted information and expect a more detailed response, you're welcome to use that. Please do. Please go ahead and put in your questions. Going to the next area, again here, I actually remember this point in one of the activities that had been dealt with on school or at the school level not so long ago, where our senior students were part of an MUN, student-arranged conference, and here it was very obvious for me to see how students measure what obedience is. That is about the listening, knowing that you have your own voice. And if we look at the elements that are on obedience, it says listening versus hearing. How do I know what I'm supposed to be doing or what I may do in a specific situation within the school environment? If we quickly go back into the family, there are certain agreements between parents and students and parents and their children which regulate what they may and may not do. Sometimes kids feel that I don't have a voice, I just have to listen and I have to do. But for us, obedience has a different focus. The main focus is on being able to listen, not only hear. That means that students have a voice, teachers are here to listen, and when it is time for the students to listen, the teacher has a voice. Certain parts of the learning process or the learning cycle involve students listening and teachers speaking, and then the tables are turned. And as they grow older, this pattern is increasingly more in favor of students. Again, very, very much a non-negotiable issue. The listening and hearing, everybody has a voice. There is a built-in respect that comes with a relationship at school level between peers as well as between adults and the students. Again, 24/7, this is a theme that goes right through all of these phases that we speak about. And it is so important. I'm thinking of an example almost a month ago when I was out in Hyderabad in one of the shopping centers, just over a weekend, doing my normal shopping, food and a few items that I needed for my own use. I would run into students with their families, and what a delight to be able to converse with them and for them to share how they feel, because now we're not in school, but there is still that relationship between myself and whoever the students were. It's always a pleasure, even with parents meeting parents in odd places. So 24/7 is very relevant. As a teacher, and I started out as a teacher, I'm a principal now, but at heart I am still teaching. And the students know that. They know that they have a voice and that they're able to contribute. So from a student's perspective, obedience isn't about rules, regulations, and laws. It is, the way we interpret it, is that if you feel that you're constantly accepted, that there is a consistency in the way your teacher treats you, the way you then begin to treat your friends, your peers in your class, whether they're just in your class, whether they're seniors or whether they're juniors. And even when they're little ones, because on our campus we have the whole spread. From the student's perspective, being obedient means that I have a voice, that I am able to voice how I feel and understand where I'm at, because it's a two-way dialogue. Teachers expect students to listen when they need to, and students expect teachers to listen when they need to. And at our campus we believe that obedience as a pattern rather than a negative perception follows a route of natural consequences. And if you can remember, when we were talking about the home situation and parenting, I shared with you the whole story around when students, or in the home environment, when your own children do things during a week, or you might have a pattern of Friday nights they may visit friends, or Saturdays they may spend out of the house being with friends and doing activities together. When there's a pattern of obedience, meaning that the student or the child in the home brought their side. In other words, they got up in time, they did their homework in time, maybe they did some chores, maybe they were looking after pets, maybe they were reading to grandmother, maybe they were involved in family activities that are essential for the whole family. And in that way, they naturally become more responsible. And you might think that they've become more obedient, but the right way to think of that is you give them a voice, they listen to you, you listen to them, and that pattern of obedience develops. And natural consequences for non-obedience, even if we can use that as a non-word, students know that if certain expectations are not met on campus, there are natural consequences. And we interpret that as a code of conduct. How should I be working? How should I be behaving? And how should I be contributing to this community? So I'm hoping that we've spoken sufficiently about obedience and clarified that it is not necessarily a negative aspect. Going to the next point, we have training and learning. And training and learning is very important for us, and I just want to quickly backtrack. We have had a note that the chat window is not working at the moment, so please do email, use the info@oakridge.in email to send in your questions, and they will be fed through to our conversation. Thank you for that. So training and learning, here we have an illustration of students who are actively engaged in an activity where they get the opportunity to illustrate what they've been learning, and as they do, they also learn from one another. Certain students have certain strengths, and the teacher has set the learning platform. Let's look at some of the pointers that relate directly to training and learning. So we believe that it's so important that each student take up responsibility for their own learning, because once they're here, they've moved from just having relationships, being able to communicate well. They develop different perspectives. Those perspectives lead to a better understanding of where they are individually, how they function within their peer group, and how that relates to real life as the teachers keep exposing them to new learning experiences. So here it's important, and I would like to bring back one of the discussion points that we had at the previous seminar. You'll find that there's a graph. We have on the y-axis, we have responsibility. If you can grade the level of responsibility from 0 to 100% on the one side, and then the number of years or age in years of students, you will see that a child at birth has no responsibility, but slowly but surely, as they grow a number of years, I wanted you to see that we do use this as a reference within the school. Students need to take up some responsibility. Let's use it a good example. Just this last week, the preschool kids, the nursery kids, were encouraged because they were acknowledged in terms of knowing where they are in the school, knowing where their classroom is, knowing how to move from the gate to the foyer to their classroom. And they were very proud because they could do that. So our challenge went out to parents. Parents, please leave your child at the gate so that they can exercise this responsibility of getting to class on time. Obviously, within the school context, there are adults strategically placed to ensure that the kids arrive at their classroom safely. But if somebody perhaps doesn't want to release their child and they insist on taking them all the way to their class, sitting them in their chair, unpacking their bag for them, what are we doing in terms of having that responsibility transfer? Similarly, by grade 10, 11, 12, students should be planning their own studies. They should have a study planner, and they should be held responsible for that, rather than having a parent arrange their lives to the T. We believe in the process that we follow at campus, that these students do develop such an independence, and we're immensely proud of them. Going to the next point again, 24/7. Training and learning in the campus, irrespective of which subject area is used or is taught or which course is taken. This is very seriously taken by staff. They know that the students need this, not only the learning in terms of facts, but also the learning in terms of the environment, because these are life skills. The next point is open environment. The school is an open environment. It means that every adult interacts with every student who comes within their zone of vision. For example, if I move from my office and I'm moving to do some class observations, on the way I will find students in the hallways, students going up and down the stairs, or students maybe just sitting outside. How do I interact? How do I make sure that training and learning is happening as I go along? Connecting with them, showing that I accept them, knowing that I always do that, I always greet, so the consistency is there. I speak to them, they speak to me. That distance is cut short, and they understand that there is a protocol which covers the obedience part. And here we are with learning and training. What am I doing by interacting with the students? They are learning, so am I. It's an open environment. We wanted to go very quickly over the 4 phases, and the pattern that we do use in the school is there is normally demonstration, look, see what I'm doing. Second step is let's do this together. Teachers and students do things together, and then teacher stands back and gives them the application. They then do the work, and then you release them because they're able to do that. I wanted to put in a reminder again. Please, if you do have questions, use the info@oakridge.in email, seeing that the chat window is not operational at the moment. Please do enter your questions on the email. To jump from this point to the next, it's so important even at home that when we want to build courage and self-motivation and independence in our kids, it is very important for us to follow this pattern. They must feel safe enough to regress. If I forget what to do, what must I do? I can go to any significant adult. Going on to the 5th point, which is law to choice. You might recognize in the visual that there's a very small picture of the green, yellow, orange, and red focus that we have in the school code of conduct. This helps students to identify what are the desirable outcomes in terms of our interactions with one another, the way they talk to one another, the way they react, the way they do their work, and how responsible they are. And I'm immensely proud of this photo because it illustrates how independent and how well adjusted the seniors in our school are. This is from an MUN which was held not so long ago. Let's quickly look at the window, the next point-by-point unpacking of law to choice. Here again, when we as adults hear law, and it's in the family context, it sometimes doesn't have a place. But it just means rules and the external controls or the environments that we create for our kids to learn how what they do and how they do it matter, because if they have brothers and sisters, what they do influences the whole family. So the emphasis here for us is on that rules are external control measures, and as we educate and live with our children in the family, there are certain things that are acceptable and certain things that are not. When they come to school, the community suddenly explodes from just a few people to at least 20 people. A student in a class might have to deal with 20 other peers, and that means that certain essential agreements need to come together for that environment to work. What may we do and what should we not be doing, and what should we be doing that helps? So we want to focus more on character development and internal control. And if you remember that graph that we showed, we're hoping that the more responsibility a student takes for their learning, the less the responsibility of the teacher or the adults in their lives would have to take. Always remembering that they're in the background and that the kids can go back to connecting with their the adults' family as well as their school family. So the internal control comes from when I accept and I have a voice, then I know how to measure when I'm supposed to be doing what. 24/7, so important. A student who has lapses, and as adults, we have lapses as well. Sometimes I feel that I can cope with everything in one day, and maybe tomorrow I might not be as resilient. Same with students. In terms of law to choice, when students become resilient enough to know when not to do something, or to know when to make the right choice, that's what we're working for in the school. So 24/7 is because it's part of life. Once your child, irrespective of their age or their grade level, gets to a point where they start doing things, and we're a school, so we're about learning, when they start learning because they want to, rather than because they have to, they move into this phase of doing things, moving from law, rules, codes of conduct, threats, to doing them because they know they're good, because that's part of life. This is also very important for us because we believe that we're preparing them for life. They are moving, as they mature, from a place where they're very dependent on almost everybody. And slowly but surely they become less dependent and more independent. But the base is always there. Their parents love and care for them. Their teachers do exactly the same. And I am reminded of how often I think of teachers that were really significant in my own education. So here we move from freedom, from the law to choice, freedom and accountability. I now have a better understanding because of the perspectives that I've developed, and I come to a point where I've mastered certain skills of life. And at our campus, this is where we prepare learning opportunities and learning experiences that allow our students to get to a point where they make these choices because they're the right choices. They get the opportunity to operate in that way. So the freedom to choose, and to choose what is best for myself first, and then for my community, and then for my family. And we often, in sharing the outcomes of what happens at school, talk about community, family, community, city, country, continent. Because the effect of this type of learning is for a lifelong period. A student who gets to this point, who makes the right choices for themselves, that affects their family. It affects their school community. It affects their wider community. Eventually these become the leaders, and they will affect the way cities are run, countries are run, and continents. In our vision, we compare the type of student that leaves our school as a global citizen. Somebody who understands themselves first, then their community, my friends, my teachers, my mom and dad, my brothers and sisters, my wider family, and they start making an impact in the wider community as well. And if you refer to our website, our school website, you will see so many examples of how these kids have picked up on these. Just a quick reminder again, please. The info@oakridge.in email is available for you to enter questions as the chat window is not working. We would love to have some questions from you, and we'll respond within the context of what we've shared so far for that. Here we see a picture, again, using that same acronym of our more senior students and some faculty. I am immensely proud, as I say, and do please visit the website to see the accomplishments that our students have. While we're waiting for some questions, just a reminder of an upcoming webinar on Saturday the 5th of December, at 11 a.m., same time as this one. There is the next webinar run by Mr. Arjun Rao, the principal of our Bangalore campus, and the topic is why IBDP curriculum can be the wisest option for your student. And we're talking here specifically about students who are entering grade 11 and 12 in the following academic year. Thank you very much for listening so far. I'm going to revert to one or two questions that we've had. And please do use the email if you have any questions as well. Well, first question we have is, my son is very shy. He won't make contact with his teacher for help. What can teachers do when this happens? Now, interestingly, if we look at the pattern that we've been talking about, the confidence that comes with students who feel that they have a voice, and sometimes being shy is not necessarily an indication of children not having a voice. It is just a personality trait. And for that, we try and encourage more and more our teachers to reach out to every student every day. Our scheduling is a block scheduling system where there is individual contact time for each student during the block. So from an organizational perspective, we already address that. But to come back to, as a parent, obviously you're asking help with this. I would say, if you know that your child is shy, there are ways to lead them to share with you what happens at school without putting them on the block. Sometimes I know, remembering from my own childhood, when I get home, Mom wants to know, so what did you do at school? What did you learn today? That immediately puts one under so much pressure. A better way to do that is to share what you've been doing on that day as a parent. And then slowly but surely, facilitating your child to share, even if they're shy. They don't have to tell you everything, but start the conversation that way. In that way, you could also then direct questions to maybe this one teacher, where you say, but your son wouldn't ask the teacher. Maybe the teacher has a different view, and I would certainly encourage you to make contact with the teacher to ask whether that's the same in class, and then both from parent side and teacher side to try and cultivate an openness and a point of acceptance where your son can feel free to speak to teachers. Again, students are not shy, will ask all the time. Students are shy, might not ask because they don't want to. It's just part of their personality. But again, I would encourage you, depending on their age, maybe if it's a primary student, it could be a bit of a challenge, but there is so much more open learning time for the teacher to connect with the student and build that confidence. If they're in middle school children have either tend to be more introspective, more questioning, and then at the higher end level, certainly in our school, we find that students do feel free to ask questions at any time. I have one more question here. It says, my daughter says she is not the teacher's favorite. She wants to know how to become her teacher's favorite. I'm smiling because I think this is something that very often happens in the school environment, where there's a perception with certain students that the teacher likes another student or other students more than they like themselves. It is so important also for us as parents to pick up on this sense. A student who doesn't necessarily identify as a strong student, somebody who might be struggling in a certain area, but doesn't have the confidence to either admit it to themselves or to their teacher, but they would speak to mom and dad. In this way, probably it's good for you to start a conversation that has less to do with favoritism and more to do with how is that specific area happening, how is the class being run, is the teacher creating a space for everybody to be participative. If I look at the planning schedules and the way that classes are supposed to be run, there is a time where each teacher gets to connect with each student in every lesson. If this is not adequate, probably by communicating with the teacher and asking your daughter whether that is fine. Do you think I must talk to the teacher? And students from about grade 6 and up would probably tell their parents not to communicate with the teacher, but that if there's an agreement on how you're going to handle it at home and you agree with the teacher, to facilitate the misunderstanding, because we do know that even within adult circles, one finds that some people are favored by others more than others, but that it's not necessarily something that should impede a relationship. It's so important that those relationships are developed. Not every child will have a similar relationship with every single teacher, but we wish to encourage everybody to be open and use all of the learning opportunities that are available on campus. Right, it looks like we have one more question, and this is sent from a teacher. This teacher has a daughter who is in school, and she says, my daughter is in grade 8, and she does not like her maths teacher. What should I do as a parent? I'm wondering how many of us have a challenge in the way we perceive the needs of our children compared to the way the teachers of those very same children or students perceive their needs. We make the distinction here. It's interesting that the student thinks that the teacher doesn't like her. It doesn't address the subject matter. But as a parent, probably I would want to look at 3 areas. Is the perception, and remember, perceptions to children are very real to them. Their perception is the truth for them. Is the challenge more around maths? Is the challenge more around the way the distance between the student and the teacher, meaning that there might not be a good relationship? Or is it about the perceptions of the peer group? Those are normally 3 areas that we as parents and as teachers we need to take note of. If it's a subject-related issue, you might want to ask her to explain to you what she's learned lately. Maybe there's a bit of a backlog or a misunderstanding that needs to be cleared up, and it's interpreted as my teacher doesn't like me. So you could look at that. You could also reach out to the teacher for more clarity on that. If it is a relationship issue, then a simple email to the teacher would help to address that. And then if it's a peer issue, sometimes one could ask, how many friends do you have? How does it have an influence on the way you think the teacher is? And that can be dealt with by having a sleepover, inviting her friends across, and hearing how they share, what they share. So I'm hoping that helped with the specific question. Just a reminder, the email to send in questions is info@oakridge.in. Right, we have another question, and this is from a student. My father becomes very angry, and I'm so scared to ask him questions, and does not allow me to sleep for enough time and wakes me up very early. This is an interesting question. As parents, when we realize the influence we have on those points we were talking about, accepting somebody as they are, and I'm talking here as a father with 3 kids who all have different talents, different abilities, and think and do things differently. If I had to treat all my kids in exactly the same way, I would probably have messed up their lives. And here, when somebody reaches out and says that they are afraid, probably the acceptance level needs to be readjusted. This parent probably needs to be doing some reflection. But as a student, as a child, how do I reach out to my father, if it were my father? Probably by getting into a situation where there is enough of a feeling of acceptance. Probably mom is less rigid. I would reach out to mom, and maybe you could say, Mom, in this learning process of, look, let's do it together, come and let's do this together for me, so that you can reach out to your dad. Waking up very early, I don't have a problem with waking up very early, but if there's no purpose to waking up early, or you feel that it doesn't give you the opportunity to do this for yourself, again, the advice is that you need to get to a point where you accept, maybe there are certain things that you find difficult within your family, but when you start communicating about it, it should help. If you need to reach out to a teacher, sometimes teachers can be good people to talk to get advice from as well. A quick reminder, info@oakridge.in is the email to use for questions. We have another question here from a parent. It says, how to encourage new students to settle down in Oakridge? From a parent side, I'm presuming this is from your side as a parent. The most important thing that one can do as a parent is to be as supportive, not overbearing or taking over the life of a student or over-regulating them, but to get to a point where you understand how much and at which age level should I be contributing to make this settling into a new school like Oakridge. Oakridge is a very open community. The adults are all very approachable. Students who come into our campus all come from different families. They think and do things differently. So there is a balance between, as adults, what do we project to our students as being building relationships, getting to a better understanding, and then moving to doing things because you want to rather than because you have to. Those patterns can be followed by parents as well. Here we have, if this is a student from the primary school, the connections with staff and other students, very important to focus. If it's a middle school student, probably you need to ease off a bit on asking questions about school and asking more about what do they really like to do. Do family type things with them. Don't reteach everything when you're home so that they can settle there. Then you have an open communication about school with them because you're focusing on home things. And then if it's a higher level student, 11 and 12, students do enter our system at grade 11 level, and sometimes there are some settling issues. But here, in my view, somebody of that age is somebody you can be communicated to very easily. If you're open and honest, that will be reciprocated, and I'm sure. If you need any help or want any more detailed information, please do use info@oakridge.in. And any emails that have come in subsequent to this talk, we would certainly give you some responses via email. Once again, thank you very much for being part of this webinar. We love sharing with you, and we would love to get your feedback as well. Do watch it on our Facebook page if you have access to that, and do leave your comments. Thank you so much.